So we'll just dive right into it then, kind of talking about specific to an area that we cover a lot along the Outer Banks. Hatteras Island has seen a lot of issues this year, past few months especially, houses falling into the ocean, coastal preservation been a huge problem out there. Local leaders out there have been calling for a state of emergency, for you to declare a state of emergency. Are you planning on doing that? Do you have anything in the works on that at all at this time?
The key is to try to help prevent these disasters from happening before they do. Congressman Murphy has a bill in the Congress that would enable people to use the flood insurance program, the NFIP, National Flood Insurance Program, to actually address their house before it falls in the ocean. Right now, what has to happen is people let their house fall into the ocean so they can get the insurance proceeds. That's pretty much insane because it just creates waste all up and down the coast. So I support that legislation, as does Commissioner of Insurance Mike Causey. So on a bipartisan basis, we support that legislation. The local governments have been clear that they've not made a local state of emergency. They haven't asked us for a state of emergency. Unfortunately, even though it feels like an emergency, there's really not anything that such a declaration would trigger in terms of a response. It doesn't come with anything.
Nothing that's already happening currently.
The main thing is the homeowners need to be able to be compensated before their house falls into the ocean. And that's why I strongly support Congressman Murphy's legislation.
Got it. And supporting generally the notion of they should be able to get some kind of insurance help before the house actually gets into the water.
It makes no sense, because once the house falls into the ocean, there's just trash everywhere up and down the coast, and that's not in anyone's interest.
Coastal preservation has been a huge thing for that area. They're talking about maybe getting a jetty built somewhere along Buxton to keep all that from getting worse, and other efforts up and down the Outer Banks talking about similar ideas. Do you support those? Have you been paying attention to this issue in particular to keep this from further eroding away? What are your thoughts on all that?
Well, what we really need to do is figure out ways to provide more resilience to NC 12. I mean, it's been washed out 3 or 4 times this year. Fortunately, there hasn't been structural damage to the road, but there's been breaches by just high tides. It wasn't even necessarily in response to a massive storm. So figuring out ways to harden and solidify NC 12. There are some places where it's especially vulnerable, and we may need to come up with some bridges to go around those hard spots. But figuring out ways to ensure that people have access up and down the Outer Banks is very important.
Got it. Okay. Moving on to a different topic, talking about ICE. Past few months especially, we've been seeing North Carolina's making national headlines with ICE agents and community response, particularly citizens kind of forming groups and essentially fighting back against ICE agents as they come into their city. We saw it in Charlotte. We've seen it in other parts of the state. What are your thoughts on all of that? Do you support not having ICE here? Do you support the efforts, the community-led efforts to kind of fight back against them? How do you feel about that?
Yeah. Look, nobody wants dangerous, violent people in this state, whether they're an American or whether they're here unlawfully. We don't want them here. They need to be held accountable for any crimes they commit. And if they're not an American, they need to be deported. Unfortunately, what ICE has done is not that. They've come to communities and essentially just randomly picked up people who were brown or who spoke Spanish. And that was shown time and time again that they were racially profiling. About 3/4 of the people they picked up didn't have any kind of criminal conviction. And the ones that did, very few of them were violent crimes. So if they were to focus their energy on getting rid of truly the worst of the worst, I think everybody would be very grateful. That's not what we've seen. They've created havoc. I do not support people fighting back against ICE. I encourage people that if they're upset by what ICE is doing in their communities, to protest peacefully. That's what our Constitution guarantees, and it has to be lawful, peaceful protest.
Any plan you have for preventing ICE agents from coming into North Carolina and essentially taking, as you said, 3/4 of the people that they were picking up were not convicted of anything? Anything that you're doing to prevent the White House from continuing that effort here?
Yeah, there is no authority for a state governor to stop foreign agents who have jurisdiction in the state. And honestly, I wouldn't want to. I just want them to do their jobs properly and focus their energy on keeping us safe and not creating havoc.
Yeah, and it's focus the efforts, not do what they've been doing, essentially. So, okay. Totally different topic entirely, talking about Helene recovery efforts still ongoing, probably will be for some time. Greg Phillips started yesterday. Any plans to keep that from becoming a problem as far as Helene recovery efforts are concerned?
Well, we've had to work with multiple FEMA directors because I think he's the third or fourth this year. I want to do everything that we possibly can to help Western North Carolina recover as quickly as it can. When we're out there, and I'm out there a lot, I've been out there dozens of times, there's nothing short of inspiration. When you see the effort that people are bringing to their own recovery, Josh Kopus, a guy who owns a bar and hotel in the little town of Marshall, or Matt and Michelle Bands have both a restaurant and a gem shop in Chimney Rock. They've worked so hard to get their businesses open again. We as a government need to meet their urgency to help those towns, the infrastructure to come back, to support small businesses, to make sure that people's homes are repaired, particularly as we go into winter. And I'm really proud of the effort of my administration. We were the first state impacted by Helene to get our housing program started. In fact, faster than any state affected by a major hurricane in over a decade. We were the first state to get our water system through EPA funding program started. We just got program out to local governments to support them on local infrastructure that was state funded. We got it from the first time the application went opened to money out the door in 7 weeks. So we are working with urgency. This work, however, it's not going to be done in 1 year. It's not going to be done in 2 years. And so I am committed to maintaining our focus and continuing to execute on the investments that are made in people of Western North Carolina.
Is the state able to sustain the recovery efforts ongoing if help from the federal government slows down?
It will be a real challenge if the federal government doesn't step up in a more meaningful way. So far, we've gotten help over $6 billion from the feds, which sounds like a lot, but when you look at the damage, $60 billion, they've given us about 11% of the overall damages. Typically, after a major storm like this, the feds will come in at about 40 or 50% of the damages to help us recover. That has not happened. I've got an appropriation request before Congress of $13.5 billion, and I'm going to push as hard as I can in the coming year to have Congress step up and meet the moment for Western North Carolina.
North Carolina has a roughly $1 billion hemp industry, reportedly, that'll effectively vanish under the new federal funding bill at some point late next year if it goes as is currently planned. Do you have a plan to address this? Do you want to keep that hemp industry around? Is there any plan to possibly expand legal rights so that industry grows at all? What's your plan for that?
Well, I didn't know Congress was going to include this in the Defense Authorization Bill, but I had already put together a cannabis commission. The whole distinction between hemp and marijuana, it doesn't exist anymore because hemp has intoxicating THC, and you're seeing it sold all over the state. If you see any shop that says vape shop, a person can go there, and there's no age restriction under the law. A 15-year-old, if the store is willing to sell it, and many of them are, can go in there and buy something that will get them high. It's not called marijuana, it's called hemp, but it's intoxicating THC. We need to regulate that because there are kids getting exposed to an intensity of drug and the THC, but also it comes in vape stuff from China where nobody has any idea what's in these products. It's not good. That's why I want to severely regulate it here in North Carolina. I do believe that adults should be able to make their own choices about consuming these products, but there has to be protection. There has to be labeling. There has to be testing. There has to be restrictions on sale, restrictions on advertising, carding. Person needs to be 21 years old. There's a lot that we need to do to make sure that this product is not sold like the Wild West as it is happening today in North Carolina.
I know we're limited on time. Just real quick, wanted to address the redistricting efforts that you're no stranger to that, I'm sure. In North Carolina, heavily favoring Republicans, and other states like California have done efforts to do the opposite, where they're redistricting to favor Democrats. Is this response something that you support, and any other plans that you have to address gerrymandering locally here in the state?
Partisan gerrymandering is toxic to our politics. It serves to drive our parties to respective corners, making it very much harder to come up with compromise and find common ground. Frankly, this whole new wave of redistricting started in North Carolina. We had a 7-7 congressional delegation, which in a 50-50 state makes a lot of sense. They were not happy with that. And last year, because the Republican Supreme Court of North Carolina gave them permission, the Republican General Assembly redistricted and made it 10-4. So they went from 7-7 to 10-4. This year, because President Trump asked them to, they're like, well, let's make it 10-4, let's make it 11-3. And so they're trying to take one of the competitive districts in the East, which elected a Democrat, Don Davis, trying to make it much more difficult for him to get reelected. It's incredibly poisonous to our politics. I strongly oppose it.
Okay, and then one more jumping off point from that. Polling throughout the year shows you having a good approval rating, well over 50% for at least the 6 polls that I saw before coming in here. Yet there's a lot of Republican majority with the Senate, the House. What does that tell you?
Well, people evaluate folks based on how hard they think they're working. I think that in North Carolina, you can be elected as a Democrat, you can be elected as a Republican. It's just, do you represent what people want? Are you identifying the issues they care about? Are you developing strategies to attack those issues? And do you have credibility with your plans? And I've just spent my entire career fighting for the people of North Carolina, and I'm incredibly honored that they gave me this privilege of serving as their governor.
Okay, just looking back year in review, I mean, Democratic governor, Republican-led Senate and House, how's that been?
We've actually gotten good things done together. I don't want to sugarcoat it. There are definitely issues where we disagree, partisan gerrymandering being one. I think that was a terrible move. But there are other issues where we've worked well together. Hurricane Helene. We would not have made the progress we've made without the General Assembly's partnership led by Republicans. The DMV, we're nowhere near where we want to be, but we've reduced wait times substantially already. Could not have happened without the General Assembly's partnership. Economic development, we had the best year of jobs announcements in the history of North Carolina. Top state for business. Those things would not have happened if we had not had a partnership between my administration and the General Assembly. So there's a lot that we work on well together. That doesn't mean that we don't have more we can do, and I'm going to continue to have my hand outreached to try to make sure that we're doing everything we can to help North Carolina move forward.
Legislation throughout the year like House Bill 805 kind of falls in line with Trump's efforts to curb rights for transgender people. Any plans to further protect LGBTQ plus people in North Carolina from attempts to curb their rights coming from the White House?
We are all children of God. Every one of us has inherent dignity. And I think identifying a population and using them as a political tool to create division and hostility does not help us move forward as a state. It's not right. It's not who we are as a people. And I think that we can focus our energies on a lot of other more important issues like keeping people safe in their neighborhoods, improving the quality of our public schools, making sure that our healthcare system is strong and accessible and affordable. That's where I choose to put my energy.